When the book first came out, I went to my oldest grandson's classroom and they were learning how to read. And I read the book, and there were kids who were asking great questions. Some, I think, who saw themselves as maybe having a little trouble reading, wondering if they were dyslexic. Some who could read pretty fluently and didn't understand that others might be having trouble. The teacher was a lovely person, but she didn't know anything about dyslexia. And, so it opened up, very different and important conversations with everybody in the room.
Welcome back to Living the Next Chapter, everybody. Happy to have you here. We're going to be talking about a great book that's going to be awesome for your kids. Are going to fall in love with it. You're going to love it as well. And it's very creative. It's in the name, The Creative Cab Company. You got to go there, check it out. Really cool website. You're going to love it. Your kids are going to love it. Great new book, like I mentioned. And I'm excited today to have Lynn here on the podcast to talk about it and her journey as an author and all the great stuff around a taxi experience. It's exciting. Lynn, welcome to the podcast. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to have a conversation with you today.
Excellent. Let everybody, Lynn, know where you are in this big world of ours.
Well, I am on the East Coast. I am in, United States, right? And I am mom of 4, mother-in-law to 3, and grandmother to 3. I am a very retired lawyer. I've had other hats. I, had a cookie business for a while, and then my youngest and I started writing a couple of years ago together, and we write together, and he does the art, and that's how Creative Cab was born. And that's our conversation today, I guess.
I like the term very retired. That's a nice combination of words. I like that.
Yes, it is something I am I'm good at saying. So I'm very retired. It was good when it was good. And then I felt I could do other things that would better serve what I wanted to do. So I took all that knowledge and used it elsewhere.
Have you been writing for a long time, or is this kind of something relatively new for you?
I never wrote a book, but I was an English major in college, and I certainly had to do a lot of writing as a lawyer, but it wasn't that creative. I've done some creative writing along the way, but not to this level. So, during COVID, John was home. John is my, youngest son by a lot. And he was home. He's an art student. And it's pretty hard to do art virtually. So, and also at the same time, I was, reading on FaceTime to my grandchildren. And we just started talking, what could we do to, pass a little more time after, we baked and gardened and, hoped our sourdough starter wasn't dying and, and we decided to give a shot at writing a children's book. And what did we know about? Well, John is a very remediated now adult, but dyslexic. And so the idea for the book, Robby the Dyslexic Taxi and the Airport Adventure, was born. And that's where we are with that today. And it's been so well received that we're writing a whole series now on other neurodivergent characters and issues.
Okay, that is interesting. What kind of other art does Jonathan like to do then?
John loves anything creative. He's getting his MFA now in Chicago, and he loves to do painting and drawing, and he also does a variety of other things. He does miniatures. He, does art with charcoal. He does the art, for this book, which is whimsical and, it's just different. And, but painting and drawing is really one of his biggest interests. So
it's amazing. Has he always been artistic and loving to do all that art and everything? I love art as well. So I like to learn how people kind of find their spot in art, right?
I think John would tell you, and he would love to have a conversation with you, but he's in class. But he says hello. But I think he would tell you that, when he was younger, when we were trying to understand what why he could tell me by three, every Thomas the Tank Engine name, but not that Thomas started with the letter T. I think, we were on a journey to understand why he was learning so differently. Obviously, everyone learns differently, but he wasn't meeting some of the cues that my other kids did and that I knew he should be. And when he was younger and frustrated and couldn't, read and write, I think he found that art, he could express himself in a way that he didn't have to know the alphabet. And I think that's where his creative side was born.
So for parents listening, and people who might not be as informed, are there different types of dyslexia? Is there different? Does it show up differently for people? And just to give us kind of an overview, kind of what your knowledge of it, because you have that firsthand knowledge. Can you explain a little bit more about it?
Sure. Dyslexia is an umbrella. It means, though, that you will not be able to read and write, normally. They've done functional MRIs, and a person who learns, how to read fluently, on their own, different areas of their brain will light up. But a person with dyslexia will not have the same areas light up. And they need to be taught how to read differently. And so if I had an MRI, say a functional MRI, and then John had one, the spots in my brain would light up differently than the spots in his, but he can read perfectly fluently. But we were lucky enough to find a wonderful school where he learned how to circumvent the spots that weren't working. And so he learned how to read. Unfortunately, it's very hard for some people, for some teachers, for some parents to understand, for some, people to know why it is that they can't read. And unless we give the community, society, a way to understand things like dyslexia better, there are unfortunately a lot of people who are told that they're not smart. And that's absolutely not true. They just need to learn differently.
Yeah, because I'm going back in my history of going in public school system and everything. If someone doesn't read at a certain level, they are either held back a year and they're asked to repeat a year without understanding what's really happening. We didn't have this kind of knowledge.
No.
And all this science to explain and help us to learn better.
Yes.
So are you seeing that as a positive, that we're getting better at understanding and helping people who are learning differently?
I definitely think society is more attuned to understanding differences and learning. Unfortunately, I think that we have put too much on teachers. There are, in a public school classroom, there can be 20 to 30 kids, right. And no human being can teach to every child in that room. So you kind of have to teach to the biggest, the biggest group. And the people on either end kind of lose out. The kids who are very smart, who might not need anything, and the kids who are on the bottom half who might not need anything. When John, who's now 26, when John was little, everyone said, oh, he's not that smart. He's, got issues. He's a little boy. He's this, he's that. And I kept saying, no, I know it's not true. I know it isn't. I know the child is smart. He can remember things that many other people can't. He just can't tell you the ABCs. And so if I had listened to what his teachers were telling me, as little as, when he was in nursery school, then I would have not gotten what John needed to educate himself. And I found that I had to really push. I had to ask a lot of questions. We didn't have the computer back then to Google what is.
Right.
I had to read. I had to talk to people. I have a friend who's a pediatrician. I started asking questions and going to the library. And I was like, I don't know why, but I think he might be dyslexic. And I finally was able to find someone who could test him. And sure enough, classic dyslexic, very smart, just needed to learn how to read and write differently. So
Interesting. And that's why I'm glad that we see progress. We see studies, we see people learning more and helping in the process of helping people learn. That feeling of being left behind or not meeting a standard in school, that can be earth-shattering for a young child who's trying to navigate life, find their own
Yeah.
independence,
Yes.
show up and make friends, and then also have this
Yeah.
to deal with and to learn through. Any kind of supports like that is great. And that's why I like the book is out in the world, because now we can talk about that. And as well, kids can be really harsh with each other
Oof.
when they
Yeah.
don't understand each other, right?
Right. I
So
agree.
understanding how people learn is also a great tool for kids as well.
I think we've had so much of a positive reception. John was made to feel less than, and part of the reason we decided to write this book is that he wanted others to not feel the same way. And we've gotten a really positive response, not just from people, kids who are dyslexic, who finally saw themselves in a book, but also to their friends, their siblings, their, teachers, their parents, their so many other people who didn't really understand dyslexia and now had sort of a place to look to start understanding it a little bit better. And I think that's why the response to the book has been so positive, not just for people with dyslexia, but for others who are interested in learning about it.
I have a lot of authors that come on this show, Lynn, and they write books and it's black letters on a white piece of paper. They move on. This is completely different
Yes.
writing for children. Now, I know that from conversation with authors, there's an editing process as we go through the words, make everything make sense, everything works, it looks nice on the page. Is there an editing process for artwork that's submitted along with the book as well? Is that part of the process?
So what we did when we wrote this book, and now we're actually have had such a positive response, we're going to write a whole series on other characters with different neurodivergent issues. But when we started it, we started throwing the ideas of the book together, and we wrote a basic manuscript, and then John started doing the artwork to match it. And his process is a couple of steps. He would sketch something in pencil, and then he inks it, and then he does watercolor. So when he did the first part, we would sit down and talk about it, but, when it was just in pencil form. And, could we tweak this? What about that? And before he got to the next step, we made sure that the pages were what we wanted them to be to match the words. And, so yes, there is an editing process, and that's John's way of doing it.
All right. Beautiful. Like I like just looking through the cover and everything for the book, and just gorgeous. I love the colors behind it.
They're
as well.
vibrant. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're beautiful.
Thanks.
So tell us more about the main character for the book then. About Robby. Like who is Robby based on? Why an airport? I've got so many questions. Can you
Okay.
kind of unpack this for us?
Sure. So, Robby, John's middle name is Robert. So he didn't want it to be Johnny, the dyslexic taxi. So we named it Robby the Dyslexic Taxi. And we took, some experiences sort of, when John was little, he was always having trouble with his left and his right, which many dyslexics do. So I had to teach him, I would say, and it's going to be backwards in here, but
Yeah.
if you put your left hand up, it makes the
an
letter L.
Yeah.
So that's how we started with him learning how to make a left or how to make, the other hand was not an R, but, he knew that this was going to be the way to make a left. And like I said, he loved like Thomas the Tank Engine and different cars and trucks. So we thought, well, what if a car couldn't do this and needed to learn how to navigate the world? How would he do it? And, people with dyslexia are very creative. They may have spots in their way they learn, and they find ways of navigating around that. And so they're very creative. And so we figured, well, Robby could, drive and do what he needs to, but if he got stuck and didn't do his usual route or the things he knew, how would he get out of that? And so he needed to learn to be creative, and that's how Robby was born. When he had to change his usual direction, how was he going to do that without knowing how to read the street signs? And that's how he was born.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because I can imagine somebody hopping into the back of a taxi cab and saying, take a left on this and take a right on that.
Hmm.
And then kind of a driver in that
Panic.
situation looking back
Yeah.
and going, oh no,
Yeah.
oh no. Right.
Panic. Hmm.
Okay. And that just seems like such an everyday occurrence that
Yes.
if you're not aware, you might not even think that that could be a possible
Yeah.
a boundary for somebody in that moment, right?
Yes. And we all have our boundaries, but someone with dyslexia, if they're not remediated, how do they navigate the world? You have to know how to read. You have to be able to, learn street signs, whatever it is. We are a society that makes words important. And so without that, they need to be creative to try to figure out a way around it if they can't actually, read the words. And dyslexic are super creative at finding methods.
For the audience, then, as you write the book and create the book with John, do you have an age group that you're really kind of focused on for this book?
I would say this is probably like a 3 to 6 year old. But if people are dyslexic and they aren't reading, they might enjoy the pictures. They might be able to pick out the words differently, obviously, than a 3 year old. But we used a dyslexic friendly font, and I think it appeals to kids who are a little older too.
Okay, so I had no
But
idea. Are
yes,
there fonts that are not friendly for someone with dyslexia?
I think that some, are easier to read than others. There's dyslexia, and then there are a few others, but we
Okay,
chose dyslexia.
okay. Because it's kind of like you can get cursive letters, which are all written, and some people are like, I can't read that.
Yes,
Right. So it makes it difficult for people. So I like
yes,
the fact that you put thought into that as well.
yeah.
Very
No, I
interesting.
think, every little bit helps. So
Right. Now, you said this is going to open the door for more books in the future.
yes,
Do you have any idea how many books you might write into the future?
I don't know. I guess we'll see how many people enjoy the book. See,
Okay.
we're choosing characters that are neurodivergent, people with different issues. The same characters will be in there, but we'll be adding new ones, to get along with Robbie and his other friends. The next character is going to have ADHD.
Okay.
There are a lot of what they call comorbidities. So, someone with dyslexia oftentimes can have ADHD or something else, could have dyscalculia, having trouble with numbers, dysgraphia, having trouble writing. And so those are what they call the comorbidities. And so we thought that all these people are going to be supportive. All the people at the Creative Cab Company are supportive of each other. And, hopefully we can give that kumbaya kind of moment to more people in the world. I think we could use that.
I love anything that brings people together. And I love too the idea that a child can hear this story, read the story, and see themselves in the story. Because that's kind of like as a child growing up reading a book, you see a superhero, for example, and you're like, oh, wow, I just think this person's amazing or this character's amazing. And you picture yourself as them. But for someone to picture themselves as the character in the story because they relate and they're working through things that this character is demonstrating to them gives them a sense of identity as well.
Yes.
That there's someone else besides me who sees the world the way I see this world. That's great.
Yes. I know when John found a community, when we found a wonderful school for him to go to, he felt a sense of relief. When we gave dyslexia a name after he was tested, there was relief because now he could say, well, it's not my fault, I'm not stupid, which a lot of
Yeah.
people had said to him. And then when he went to the school, everybody in the school had the exact same thing that he did, to a greater or lesser degree, but he found his community. Now, there are other ways to find community, maybe online or Facebook groups or, different ways to do it. But back then, John, we didn't know anybody else who had dyslexia. So it was wonderful to find a community. And I think it's really important in general to find your people. And I think it's helpful to everybody to have other people to talk through all these, things. So find your people is something I definitely recommend.
What did you learn about yourself, about John, about dyslexia in the process of writing the book? What was there any moments here as you're going through this? You're like, oh, like did that happen for you as an author for this book?
Well, John, I went to the school, which is probably about 45 minutes to an hour away. So John and I, we sort of made a family decision because John has three older siblings, and it was going to be, hard. I had to drive him to school. So we made a family decision, that John was going to go, which meant the older kids, had to navigate things a little more without me home. We had to eat a lot of peanut butter and jelly because it was a private school. Like we really made a collective family decision. And
Yeah.
lovely that we are really, I think, wonderful, supportive family of each other. So I digress, but John and I were in the car a lot together. And I think, we learned a lot about each other. And so there weren't a lot of surprises, but periodically, originally I was going to write the story myself. And John's like, I have my point of view and I'm
Mm.
going to I'd love to be the co-author. And so I definitely got some more of his insights on how he sees certain things and how he wanted to articulate it. So, if you talk to people, no matter how well you know them, there's always going to be something you find out. So,
What do you think John would say if he was able to join us today? And he's in class. And John, I'm glad you're in class. What would you say John might chime in here around the artwork specifically? What was he proud of for the book? What made him happy being a part of this project? What could you say on his behalf?
I think I think the fact that he has gotten so much, really wonderful feedback. We went back to the school that John went to, and he read the book to the kids, and
Oh,
he was treated like a rock star. Everyone wanted his autograph, and they could see themselves like, wow, I'm here and I'm working hard, but look, I can be something someday, and I can be who whatever I can imagine myself. And I think he really, that was what he wanted from the book. But when he got that, I think he was really pleased. And it was lovely to see all the kids like swarming him and, you know, will you sign my book and will you sign me an autograph? And it was really a lovely moment. So I
I
think,
love it.
yeah.
I love it. Okay, so I noticed on your website there's a resource tab.
Mhm.
I haven't seen everything yet to ask this question, but would it be something that kids could download, like a coloring version? They can color it themselves. Is that available at all?
There are coloring pages. We've had to do a little tweaking with the website, but yes, there are coloring pages they can, print out. And there's a way to get in touch with us as well. So, if there's ever any question, they can find us on our website, reach out to us that way. We are on Instagram and Facebook. If people want to reach out and DM us go to Creative Cab Company. And that's the website too. And
Yeah,
we love having conversations with people about all of this.
it's amazing. I'm looking at it and I'm seeing all the different activities and learn how to draw, Robbie. Like this is so much fun
Thank
to
you.
see all of the stuff that's on the page. It's
Yeah.
a great website as well. Kind of as John has kind of seen this come out, you've mentioned the new books coming and things in the future. What is he excited about as a co-author with you about the new projects coming up in the future?
So he's wearing so many hats these days. He's the student hat. He's actually a
Yeah,
TA for a bunch of other students. Um, but these books are a pet project to him because he really wants children to feel seen. And so I think the ability to wear a slightly different hat, to use his, sort of, childlike cartoony characters and the vibrant colors is different from what he has to maybe do at school to learn. And so I think he enjoys being able to be playful with his art and then, go back to do what he has to do for school.
have you had requests from community members and fans of the book for to do other things that you haven't really considered yet? I'm thinking, like, for example, color blindness would be one that a lot of people wouldn't understand what color blindness is. And the colors in the book might not resonate with somebody who might have color blindness. So a book that is easy for them to enjoy might be something that's kind of on the outside of what you do, but might actually reach an audience that no one's talking to, right?
That's an interesting thought. I should talk to John's father, my husband. He is colorblind. So I don't know that we've ever thought about it because for him, it's not quite as drastic. He can see
Yeah.
shades, but not the vibrancy. I don't know if there's a way to do that in the artwork, but that's a good conversation. I can bring it up with John and see if he has any thoughts about it.
Because one thing I love watching is when people with color blindness get those glasses, those special glasses, put them on for the first time and they see color. And they're like, pull them off, put them back on, pull them off. And just that moment of them seeing the world differently, right? It's like, oh my gosh. Right?
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people understand what that really means. I have a friend with color blindness, and he'll walk over and he's like, does this outfit match? Like, does this go with this? Because I have no idea. Right? And you're like, really? Yeah.
We used to tease my husband. I'm going to date myself, but back in the day when my kids were little, there was something called garanimals, and
Okay.
you could match, like you could buy clothes that matched so that you can. So we used to tease my husband that, we would stack his closet in a way, his side of the closet in a way that he could see where his blue shirts are, and like I
Yeah.
said, his color blindness is not so drastic. He can see shades, but he might not see how green the grass is or, how red the shirt is. But for some people, the shades are very difficult.
Yeah. And going back to what we said earlier, the book might actually be a resource for someone who doesn't have color blindness, for them to understand what their friend at school sees.
Yeah.
Right? They might not have any idea what this really means. So I love the fact that if maybe you don't have dyslexia, but now Robbie's going to teach you about dyslexia. Now you understand your friend better at playtime
Yes.
and all of that. And you can be an ally for your friend instead of wondering why they process differently. Right? So your book is actually for both
Yes.
someone with dyslexia and someone who's learning about dyslexia as well.
When the book first came out, I went to my oldest grandson's classroom and they were learning how to read. And I read the book, and there were kids who were asking great questions. Some, I think, who saw themselves as maybe having a little trouble reading, wondering if they were dyslexic. Some who could read pretty fluently and didn't understand that others might be having trouble. The teacher was a lovely person, but she didn't know anything about dyslexia. And, so it opened up, very different and important conversations with everybody in the room.
For the teachers listening, because this would be a great book to have in our classroom,
Yes.
right? That would be an
Yes.
amazing resource for your students to have in that bookshelf with all those books. Everybody should have a copy of this in their classroom. But for the teachers, teaching a class, you talked about a big group of kids and you have to kind of teach to the larger number. But is there something that a teacher should have on their radar in interacting with their students that might be just a sign for them to go, I need to kind of either explore this with the parents or ask more questions when I see Johnny or Susie in my classroom and they're kind of struggling in this area? Is there any kind of little flags that you've noticed that would be helpful for someone to identify or at least ask questions of their students and their families?
That's a great question. I think people just automatically assume if somebody is struggling, then they're not quite as smart as they need to be. And
Yeah.
that is the first no. I think it's very important. Obviously, everybody learns differently. There are six of us and, or now my oldest children are grown and with children of their own, some of them, but I think everyone learns differently. Of all of us, my husband can do math really well. My oldest son, got an MBA. The rest of us needed math tutors, like can't do math for anything. And, everyone learns differently. But I think there are very important cues that, in the reading, learning how to read. And when you can't say the ABCs by the time you're, 5, 6 years old, I think that's something to investigate. I think, you can't just say, not that smart, or oh, he's a boy, he's slow learn, you can't just chalk it up to something else. I think you need to start considering that maybe there's something else going on. And, I don't sometimes maybe children need to be held back, but I think for the most part, that's not the best choice because as they start getting older, if they have dyslexia or something else that needs to be remediated, if you hold them back, then they're just going to feel really not that smart and less than. And it's going to start eating away at who they are and they're going to be teased. And I think it's just really important to listen to for the teachers to, sort of investigate further, but also for the parents to listen to the verbal cues and the nonverbal cues. When John was little, he's sweet and easy, he would start acting out and the teacher's like, wow, he got up and he walked around and he just wasn't listening. And I'm like, okay, that's not John. Why is he doing that? So the nonverbal cues are he was frustrated. He was
Yeah.
embarrassed,
Right.
and I think it's important for parents and teachers, but especially the parents to find out what's going on with their child.
And then if you layer on a layer of shyness or being
Hmm.
introverted or quiet kid in the class,
Hmm.
hiding some of these things,
Yeah,
the teacher might not even pick up on that because,
right,
oh, David in the corner is just quiet. That's how he is. But
right,
David might be struggling to even understand what's going on and shy to put his hand up and ask for help. Right. So there's
exactly.
all these different layers. And
Yes.
for a parent, then you have a diagnosis for your children around dyslexia. You come back home. Where do you start? Like, what did John need from you as a parent to understand and find his way of learning? What did he need from you in those moments?
The first thing I think, everyone needs, and it's sometimes hard to find, we're all busy, but patience. I
Okay.
think it's important to have patience and ask questions. And, you know, we're talking 20 years ago, and they didn't know enough about dyslexia. And the reading specialist said to me quietly, she goes, I shouldn't be telling you this, but, I can't help him. I do not know how to help a dyslexic child. And we thought, now what? So I started reading, I started investigating, and I did not know that I could be the only resource to help John. And so we looked at schools and there, as I mentioned, there's this wonderful private school that will only accept kids who are very intelligent and have a language-based learning issue. Mostly it's dyslexia. If you don't have that, then you need to see what other resources your town might have. The method that worked best for John and that the school taught was this method called the Orton-Gillingham method.
Hmm.
And it's a multi-sensory approach. It taught the kids how to sound things out and to write things out and to, use foam and to be creative to try to write their letters so that there were so many ways their brain was getting the shape and the sound of the letter A. And so that's the very basic way of what Orton Gillingham is, but that's the method that worked best for John and for all the kids at his school. But I would definitely suggest, going to a Facebook group, asking questions, going to your school. And it's not always easy. There's a lot of resistance because sometimes it costs a little extra for the school system to help your child.
Right.
But keep fighting for it. There are resources out there, and each community and each state is a little different. But I definitely think you have to keep pushing because it's really important for your child.
Is there anything missing from our conversation, Lynn, that John would like be tapping in, saying, "Can we make sure we cover this?" Because I don't think you guys have talked about this part. Do you think there's anything that we're missing? I'd love to have him here, but again, he's in class; he needs to be there. But I just want to give him time.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thanks. I think he would like the world to know that dyslexics are smart and creative. He went to school with, somebody who's an engineer and he does, aerospace engineering. He has a friend who's a musician. He has a friend who's an athlete. He's a friend who's a playwright. I think every dyslexic is a human being and they have so much creativity to tap into. And they usually are pretty empathetic people because they had to navigate that world a little differently when they were younger, and it has made them empathetic people and they're creative people. And I think it's very important for people to take people as they are and not just assume because they're a little different that it's a bad thing.
It can be an advantage.
It can be. And in this case, I think John will tell you, I've seen it. It's a superpower. It has made him a super creative person. So
I'm envisioning those kids gathering around him looking for an autograph on the book. Like that's just a good moment.
it was such a good
I love
moment.
that.
I have to be honest, I was kind of teary because,
Yeah.
you
Right.
you see your child so happy and you remember where they started. And so it was really lovely.
A lot of hard work, some tears, I believe, probably along the way, a lot of frustration as we work through the years and years of, learning. But to see the result, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
worth every all of it, every penny,
Right.
every moment. So
Amazing. Okay, so send us again to the website, Lynn, so that we can kind of head to the exit here. And I have another question to ask at the end.
sure.
But again, what we're going to see on the website, again, it's so kid-friendly, family-friendly. There's so
Yep.
much good stuff on here.
Thank you.
Take us to the website.
creativecabcompany.com. And then we are also Creative Cab Company on Instagram and Facebook. You can find us on LinkedIn. Um, we're working our ways towards other platforms. We're in the process. We're starting a Substack articles it's under Creative Wayfinders.
Okay.
So yeah, but if you can't find any of those things, if you go to Creative Cab Company on social media or the website, then ask away, and we're happy to answer.
Any thought of an audio version of the book as well?
We've actually been talking about doing that. So we have the e-book version on
Yep.
Kindle and Kobo. We're working on making it so that you can turn on the Audible part of it, and then maybe doing a fun sort of, I don't know, Audible or some other platform where we can actually read the book and, have it be fun and cute. So we're in the process of figuring that out. I'll keep you posted.
Okay, I would love to see that. I love the old timey me with the book, and you could listen to it, and it would go ding, turn the
Yes.
page. Right, I love those.
Yeah,
Because you could
8-track.
actually see, right?
A little
And-
cassette tape.
Yeah, remember? Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah.
do. My kids had
There
them.
you go.
Yep.
Yeah, so that'd be really fun for this book. Again, maybe for some students that can't read at this point
Yes.
to understand what's on the page, but to hear it
Yes.
maybe reinforces that for them as well. That's a great resource. I love that.
Thanks. Yeah, no, we're work in progress.
There you go. I love it. We want it all, Lynn. We want it all. We want it now because you're doing
Thanks.
such great stuff. Excited for both you and John and to see what's coming next. We can always go to your website and catch up on the latest projects that you guys are working on. Please give my thanks to John for
I
the
will.
beautiful artwork and all of the creativity that he put into this. You can tell this
Thank
is
you.
a real passion project for him and for you both. So a great project to do together with son and mother. That is so cool. I love this.
It's been really great. Thank you.
Excellent. Everyone, all information will be in the show notes. Would encourage you to go. And like I said, you're going to buy a book for yourself. You're going to buy a book for your friends and family. You're going to buy one for your teacher and put it in the library, in the classroom. You're going to just buy multiple copies of this book, not just one. And you're going to leave a great review so that other people, when they see that review and read your words about why this book is so great, they're going to want to buy it as well. So as readers, as listeners, that's my encouragement. Support
Thank
with
you.
reviews, buy multiple copies, and let's support this great mother-son combo. This is
Thank you. That's lovely. That'd be wonderful. I so appreciated. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much again for pressing play. As you've heard, great guests on the show. And one thing you didn't hear in this conversation is what? What did you not hear? Think about it for a second. That's right. Not a single solitary commercial for a mattress or a supplement or a whatever you call it. No. Why? Because we don't want to break up the conversation with commercials. So the fact that you're still here means that you are a fan of the show, I'm assuming. So if you want to help, to keep the podcast going and to make me feel really happy. All I really care about is coffee, okay? I just got to be honest. I love coffee. I'm drinking one right now. It's starting to get cold. I need to warm it up. Helping us with our Buy Me a Coffee link over at livingthenextchapter.com and also in the show notes helps kind of keep the lights on around here. Remember, I'm doing this for free. I'm paying for everything. So I would love to have a little coffee donation, even $5 kind of fills up my cup. And I would love to enjoy a coffee from you. So if you're interested, again, thank you for listening. But you can use our Buy Me a Coffee link and fill up the cup. Thanks for being here.